Good day to you. Jason here, Birchfield Family Farm, Oxford, Ohio, grass-fed Red Devon cattle, St. Croix sheep and chickens in a rotational grazing system here. A bit of an overcast day today. We got some light rain coming down now. Had a 1/10 of an inch or so roll through early this morning. That'll keep us in the grazing game here. Got a good word for you. This is from Matthew 29:19. These are Jesus' words. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. I want to get right to it here. I want to do a video today on sheep and cattle comparing profitability. Let's jump back into the numbers. You guys know I'm a numbers guy here. If you haven't watched that last sheep video I did, I think it was a couple videos ago, I'll link to it now. I'd highly recommend watching that first just to get a feel for what I'm doing here. Just to reiterate, I keep a high amount of emphasis with using spreadsheets like this as operating in a vacuum. Okay, meaning real world farming is real world farming, spreadsheetville, not so much. What I am looking for and what we can draw from this, I think, are general trends. I had an older couple show up here, it's been several years back, and I was talking to the wife, and she said, they were in the market for sheep. They wanted to buy some sheep from me, and they did. I think they may have gotten a ram. I can't really remember what exactly they bought, but I struck up a conversation with them because they looked very familiar with the farming world, and sure enough, they had over 100 head of cattle that they were running. I remember thinking, what is she doing here with 100 head of cattle? Why would you come here looking for sheep? Now, I flat out asked her, I said, what's the rationale here? What are you looking to do? And she looked at me point blank and said, sheep are more profitable than cattle. So I combined tidbits like that over the years with some of what Jim Garish has to say too. I think I referenced that in the sheep video. He asks, what do you call the most profitable kind of small cow? And his answer is a sheep. So we're ready to dive in here. Let's see if there's any credibility to what these folks are saying. There's three primary comparisons I'm making today between sheep and cattle. I'm comparing market value of breeding stock, comparing actual pounds of meat made, and comparing the current value of the meat. Now, this is for 100% grass-fed animals. Hay prices are figured in and are actually cumulative. So we're assuming 120-day hay season, 3% of body weight per day fed out, and I'm paying about $100 a ton for my hay price. So those are the numbers we're going off of. A few folks pushed back on those numbers from that last sheep analysis video. I think we titled it something like $2,500 to $1.4 million with St. Croix sheep on grass. Had some pushback. Let's implement a 10% call rate here each and every year on the sheep side alone. Not the cattle, just the sheep. That's 10% of the entire flock, not just the lamb crop. That's at the end of every year. Entire flock. Just a side note, I do not see anywhere near 10% loss a year. We'll figure that in though. On the breeding stock side, with sheep, we're starting with 3 ewes and 1 ram, and assuming our actual real world lambing rate over 5 years is 1.39. That is our real rate, 1.39. Sheep start breeding at 7 months old. Gestation is 5 months, so lambing starts right around 1 year old. The offspring each year are divided half male, half female, which is about what we see here each year. The ewe lambs are added back in to the ewe numbers to continue multiplying each year. The market value column is the gross value at the end of each year using real world numbers of $500 a ewe, $450 a ram. The profit potential column is that market value minus the cumulative hay cost of each year up to that point in time. You can see here we hit $1 million for the first time in profit after year 13 on the sheep. With cattle, we're starting with the exact same numbers, 1 bull and 3 heifers. Let's say that year 1 is when each animal is actually born to keep this congruent. Now remember, with cattle, they're not breeding until about 2 years old. And that's with 100% grass-fed anyway. No growth hormones or any of that crud in this analysis. The highest price in Ohio I could find on Red Devons was about $2,800 a heifer. We paid a couple grand for our bull. back in 2020. So, you know, $3 grand an animal, I think that at least gets us close. I'm not talking about a grand champion show animal here. Okay, this is real world working, breeding stock. Gestation is 10 months on cattle, so we're really not seeing any growth in numbers until those calves start dropping near the end of year 3. This is overstated too because I'm just taking the total head at the end of each year and multiplying that by $3,000 figure. So you're gonna have some young stock in there that are absolutely not worth $3,000. But again, let's give cattle every advantage. Going out 15 years here, we don't even hit half of what we see on the sheep side. About $536,000 profit potential. Looking at that chart here, you can clearly see the curve on the sheep side just obliterates the cattle. Now, worth noting too, I have my actual real-world lambing rate plugged in here, so it's reflecting losses like stillbirth or single births or even a call ewe that doesn't lamb at all. On the cattle side, we're actually assuming a 100% calving rate, no calls. Everybody breeds back every single year. Nobody's open ever. It's certainly not reality. But the point is we're giving cattle every opportunity to put up some numbers here, okay? 687% increase in sheep breeding stock profit over cattle at the end of 15 years. Again, that's cumulative hay costs figured in for both cattle and sheep. Okay, let's move on to actual pounds of meat. I'm thinking, okay, well, sheep breeding market is hot. Maybe it's overinflated. Let's sink our teeth into actual meat being produced each year. We're assuming a 1,000-pound cattle beast ready by 2 years and a 100-pound lamb ready in a year. With grass-fed stock, those numbers are pushing it on the high side. Let's look at this chart again. Incredible curve on the sheep side. We see sheep pass up cattle in actual pounds of meat produced going from year 7 into year 8. But just because there's more actual meat on the cattle side below year 8 doesn't mean they're more productive. It's just that you're raising a much larger animal. And you look at how this ends up after year 15. Sheep have produced 314,038 pounds of meat, cattle only around 49,000. After 15 years, sheep have produced 536% more pounds of actual meat than cattle. Switching to meat value in dollars, for this, we're using actual numbers from actual producers this year, 2024. We're valuing selling whole animals after processing with processing costs figured in. Now, many producers require consumers to pay processing. So the farmer just drops the animal off at the processor and consumer pays farmer, then consumer deals with processor. For this, I just figured processing into both sides to give us a clear indication of the meat value. For sheep, there's mutton and lamb, and they're figured differently. Lamb carcass is $380 a whole, mutton is $325. Processing is $120 an animal. Let's use that lower number for mutton, and we're out the door with $205 per animal. On cattle, the actual current charge on a whole local beef is $2,646, with $800 being paid for processing. So we're out the door with $1,846 an animal. Those are actual cattle numbers from a local producer here this year. Taking a look at the chart here, it's year 7 into year 8 where sheep pass up cattle in actual meat value. Meat value of over $1.4 million on the sheep side compared with around $253,000 on cattle. That's over 15 years, and again, hay costs are baked in the cake there. Over 15 years, a 455% increase in sheep meat value in dollars. Notice on both species, selling breeding stock is considerably more profitable than selling meat. But the big question here is, why do we see sheep dominating over beef in each and every way we slice it? Well, there are 3 primary reasons sheep consistently outperform cattle year after year. This is the takeaway. Number 1, younger breeding age. Sheep breed at 7 months old and lamb at a year. Cattle need 2 years to mature and another 10 months before we see a calf. Number 2, gestation of a sheep is 1/2 the time of a cow. 5 months versus 10 months. Number 3, sheep regularly have more offspring per birth event than cattle. Our sheep after a year old, typically twin and triplet even. So has our real world experience been consistent with this analysis? I went back and looked, and our sheep have grossed 10.13 times our initial investment that we made back in 2018. That's figured over 5 years, and we've just actually gone through our 6th lambing here. So 10 times our initial investment in 5 years, real world dollars. I challenge you to find any investment that's going to come even close to that, let alone making it off of all sunshine and rain, right? Doing this on all grass, absolutely amazing. When you think about it, you know, that's what we're selling, sunshine and rain. So 10% per year in the stock market is not going to touch an investment like these sheep. What about cattle? Well, we've gone from 4 animals to 9 in about 4 years. Still not enough to really sell quite yet. But cattle have been undoubtedly much slower to get going, both with meat and on the breeding stock side. So if all this is true, why do we even raise beef? Why do we see so many American farmers still raising beef instead of sheep? Well, to be honest, I like to eat beef. I love a good steak. I think a lot of it is cultural. And what a lot of folks don't know is during World War II, Americans were fed nasty canned mutton. Okay, and the military was not a particularly discerning customer, from what I read, and they took what they could get during that time. Most of it was poor, gamey meat. And again, I'm getting this through what I'm reading secondhand here. Obviously, I wasn't around, but I really think a lot of soldiers came back from the war wanting nothing to do with sheep, right? I mean, imagine that experience. You're not only consuming a poor tasting product, but you've got all the horrible war experiences that you're now associating with the consumption of this animal, right? And so, I can't blame my grandfather for not wanting anything to do with sheep. Coming back from the war, but perhaps now, that negative cultural view is dissipating, and I really think we're seeing an emerging market for these amazing animals when it's done right on all grass. Again, please take these numbers with a grain of salt. This is just a spreadsheet analysis, valuing flocks and herds on that balance sheet. They're an asset. No, they're not near as liquid as cash. Okay, but they still have a value, and they're able to keep your grass trimmed, making meat, milk, and more babies, and putting fertilizer out the back end. We still don't have a machine that can touch that, even with all of our advancements here. So look for the overall trends and what I'm presenting today. And again, I'm just here to drop seeds. Take what you can use. Let the rest fall away. Thanks for hanging with me today. Be blessed, be at peace. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.